Great peace, great peace, great peace, great peace, Shakoki. So this is what I'm understanding, and this is what I'm starting to like realize is that throughout this entire discussion, like people are missing out. Like if I see like the Sentinelese, the Jawa, I see the Suri tribe, I see the Hazabi tribe, I see the Omatic tribes, the Gullah Geechee. I see like all these people look exactly the same. They may show you on camera like, this person looks different than this. They may show you that on camera, right? But when you start matching people, like no assumption needed, GD matching, right? When you start matching certain cranial structures, neural melanin, when you start matching voice exchanges, size exchanges, whether a person is existential or insequential in their height, right? And you start looking at, their food habits, like what do these people eat, right? You start to notice all of that, and you wonder, like, all these people came from one source at one point in time, whether it's the Sentinelese, the Jawa, the Orange, on unto the Gullah Geechee, the Aztec, the Toltecs, whatever it may be, right? You notice that the foods they eat, their size, the speed of the beats per minute, the speed, the tempo of their language, all of that. You notice that they all came from one source. You notice that. Like, why is it that the Jawa and the Sentinelese eat the same foods? Why is it that the Gullah Geechee plants rice and the Jawa, right? Who extends from them? Who is their protege? It's the Chinese, right? So the Chinese, they farm rice. How does that happen? How does that happen? And you notice like they all have this same body type, because again, like I haven't seen anybody who is the tallest tribe I've probably seen is the Dinka, and I'm thinking, right, the Dinka and the Fula. The Dinka and the Fula, those are the tallest tribes I've seen. Everybody else is like 5'8", 5'9", 5'6", 5'5", and it's something I should have been did this conversation, right? But I had to do this because I heard Joyaih's conversation with the callers. He's picking on the fact that, you have people starting to renounce that word pretendian, and they're starting to come into their own consciousness. He's picking on them for doing that, right? But this is what I see, right? When I look at the Mandingo and the Mandinka, they're all like 5'10" at average. When I look at the Dinka, they're all like 6'3", 6'4" at average. When I look at the Fula people, they're all like 5'11", 6 foot at average, right? When I look at the Sentinelese, the Jawa, they're all like 5'7", 5'6". They're basically like prototype Irishmen. You know what I mean? Like, so you look at that. So this is something you can't necessarily bypass and kind of not look at. It's that the fact that these tribes, they're all poaching off the land. They all trap seafood, fish, lobster, snails. Some of these tribes, like the Baka, right? They even trap rodents. So you can't look over that. You can't look over that. Joyaih, right? He's not showing, those particular people in New York who do that. They're all in apartments, right? They're not poaching off the land. It's like the police can't stop you from poaching. You know what I mean? Like, so what is holding it? We want to see the culture. Like, what is stopping you all from saying we're going to poach? Like we're going to trap birds or anything like that. And a lot of them are taking on the thing where, which I agree with, right? We're not going to hurt living animals. We're not going to hurt living creatures. But again, you kind of see like, okay, like show me, like, are you all really going to say we're going to do this? Like, I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing them. I'm not really seeing them take that approach, Sentinelese isn't asking the Indian government or the Indian army for permission to use the vessels, to swim out into the sea and get fish. They're not asking them for permission. They're doing it on their own will. They're doing this on their own approach to their own ancient knowledge, right? Like, they all know in their language, right? In whatever language that may be. Because I read a couple of their words, and I think it's very similar to Chicago. No one's telling them that they can't fish. No one's telling them that they can't poach pigs or poach deer. No one's telling them they can't do that. The victimhood you see in America is with the tribes where they're claiming that, they're not being allowed to have their lands back or do this. Really, what I see is that a lot of our people, like including Native Americans, right, they're afraid. They're afraid that if they try to be one with the land, someone's going to come by and do them like they did Joyaih, right? Joyaih was one of the last Western Indians who basically lived off the land, right? He was one of the last of his tribe. And we saw how they did him, right? They got him off the land. They put him inside a prison, made him, style his hair, made him put on clothes. We saw what they did with him. And a lot of the natives start thinking, right? Because a lot of them, right, they're South Welsh. Maybe some Belizean here and there, but they're not entirely what you would say indigent, right? They're not entirely indigent, right? Because, like, if you're a South Welsh, right, then you come from South Wales, Like, are you going to say, you're from this tribe or you're from that tribe? Like, how do you do that without glossing over the fact that you may be Eurasian? You see what I mean? So all you got to do is just find out who people are, and people who don't know people, right? Like, if you just look at a person, their cranial structure, right? If it's round, right? If it's round, like me, I have a round and also rectangular face, right? I don't have a diamond face like an Irishman. So if you see my face, you're supposed to automatically know where my ancestors come from. You're supposed to automatically know that. But you knowing that, right? If a person is South Wales, if a person is Irish, if a person is English, if a person is French, if a person is German, if a person is Swiss. Then you also have the tribes in Africa, right? Where you kind of wonder, like, okay, where's this person from? Where's this person from? Where's this person from? You're supposed to know how Senegalese look. Even if they are Nigerian, you're supposed to know how they look, right? So that's the only thing our people got to learn. It's like facial recognition. That's the only thing they got to learn. And I think eventually they will learn it. As they start to get more comfortable with learning knowledge and not being scared of knowledge, it'll be easier. But, like, learning is supposed to be fun, man. Like, you're not supposed to run from learning. Like, you're not supposed to get knowledge and feel like you are entitled to do people wrong because you may know this certain cue about things, or you may know this certain cue about things. It isn't all about quantum and quotient. It's not about that. It's really about you sacred keeping what others may want to know, but they not know yet. Because you can tell a person something and it'll pass their intellect. It'll pass them. It'll pass them. So you got to start to learn those. You got to start to learn those things, you know. And so we'll figure it out, man. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So again, when we look at those two videos I just uploaded of Joe, it says Joe and Native American. When we look at those two videos, the main thing that's going to stand out is that his callers who are asking him questions, right? They're not entirely sure of who they are themselves. They're not entirely sure. I heard one person said they were brunette. You know, I never heard that before, but I understood what he was saying. But, you know, I'm wondering, like, why he just didn't ask them, like, you know, are you these people really? You know what I mean? And you're just, you know, chasing a cat, you know? So he didn't do that, you know? So we'll see. Great peace, Yakoki.